right, you ready to just jump in, my guy, and I'll let you.
I'm ready to roll, man. Let's do it.
All right.
Let's do it.
Any Olympic United Full EDW suspect 341 Sulphur Close at McDonald's. Suspect is male Hispanic, 25 years, 5'6", 110, wearing a black hooded sweatshirt, beige pants, code 2, incident 3132, earning 2026.
So, actually, my first question for you. Well, I guess people here don't realize we've been talking. So, uh,
Yeah.
there's nobody who follows me that probably doesn't follow you by any chance. But if not, why don't you tell everybody who you are, Ian?
Yeah, my name's Ian. I run a brand called Cancel This Clothing Company, which also has shot off into Cancel This Conspiracy on long form like YouTube and Rumble channels. And I'm just a dude. I'm not an expert at anything. I'm not super smart. I'm just good at making short form videos. And I started doing it about a year ago now, and had a lot of like very fortunate success early on. And I've sort of just made a platform of communicating complex topics, not always news, often financial, often just not terribly political, but kind of trying to be centerline and communicating these things in ways that are easily digestible to huge numbers of people. Because I think that a lot of the most important things that we should all be paying attention to are complicated on purpose so that people won't pay attention to them and will instead pay attention to like those fucking right wingers or those left wingers or, you know, whatever simple hatred is being spewed at us. So I'm just a dude that makes videos that tries to, I'm trying to learn. I'm just a learner who's trying to get smarter every day, sharing my research through videos that hopefully explain it in really simple, understandable breakdowns. And it's, you know, I've had very fortunate and large success doing so far.
Yeah, I would say so. Now, did you start off on TikTok? Because I'm not a TikTok guy, but that seems to be where before I knew who you were on X, where I saw your content would drip over from was always TikTok.
Yeah. I started on TikTok intentionally. I was sort of a student of the game for a while before I actually launched my platform, and I intentionally chose to start on TikTok because of the way that it allows small accounts to grow if you're providing value. And I got into TikTok at a fortunate time when they had just rolled out their 10-minute videos feature. So their algorithms were pushing long videos, and I was naturally making longer videos because these sort of investigations that I do naturally run from 3 up to 10 minutes or more. And then from TikTok, I was able to branch that audience over to the other platforms much more effectively, because it can be a real challenge to grow on platforms like Instagram or YouTube or X but when you already have like hundreds of thousands of TikTokers that are already sharing your shit and already talking about what you're talking about, it's like that made it so much easier to jump platforms and already have a bit of a foot in the door. So that strategy worked out very well.
I noticed on it was YouTube they gave you a little bit of shit for your 9/11 series, right? Is that where they started poking at you?
Yeah, I was actually getting pretty deep into the YouTube like 5 or 6 months ago. Super low tech, just doing what I can do with what I've got. And I started digging into 9/11 because my whole plan with YouTube was to make it a slightly more contiguous investigation that, like, if you watch the videos I was putting out one after the other, it would be a building understanding of like the world at large and sort of the lesser talked about primary events, like main events that changed the narrative of history and of our understanding of politics and stuff forever. And that naturally, like, that led through like I went all the way back to like pirates and like the East India Trading Company and sort of the evolution of the corporate state, the corporate army state in a way. And then it led forwards and eventually hit 9/11, which you have to talk about. And I kind of realized as I was doing that, like, this is going to be sketchy. YouTube does not want. And immediately YouTube was sending me notifications and kicking my videos off and demonetizing my channel. And so I kind of hit a big roadblock for a little while there and took a pause from YouTube, circled the wagons. And now that I've grown my other platforms more and I'm not like trying to rely on YouTube and TikTok for my living entirely, now I've been able to get back on and I've dug pretty deep into the 9/11 stuff a little more. And some of those videos just aren't on YouTube because I don't care to deal with the strikes that will come from talking about Israel and 9/11.
But they do show up on Rumble unedited, right? Because I watched your
Yeah.
YouTube shit first, and then I jumped over to Rumble to catch the differences. So
Yeah, Rumble is great for. I've never heard of or seen any censorship on Rumble. I've not experienced any censorship on Rumble. They certainly don't pay the same as a lot of the other platforms, but I will take poor free speech over rich controlled narrative any day of the week. I'm not stressed about that one bit. So I'm just happy to have platforms like Rumble that I can just say whatever because working on TikTok for so long, TikTok is wildly censored, and we start censoring ourselves, like words like unalive. Those didn't exist 5-6 years ago. That's ridiculous. Why are we saying like dead is not a bad word? But you just get so hemmed in by the censorship that before you're even creating content, you're already self-censoring. And so getting onto platforms like X is a lot freer, even though it's not perfect, and Rumble and Locals and there's these other platforms really like opened my tongue back up, and it was crazy to realize like how much self-censorship I was doing in my reporting and videos. So it's been really liberating to have platforms where I can really just say what I want and to just let the censored platforms do what they're going to do, because fuck them.
you know, there's and I can't think of the term right now. You'll have to forgive me, but there's a term in psychology, right? And it's when you self-censor and you say something that you know that opposes your real view, right? So like, let's say I'm pro spaghetti, but because of the powers that may be, I have to say bad things about spaghetti, right? It creates a conflict, right? And I can't remember what that term is, but the social media platforms seem to really kind of push that. It feels like they definitely understand it, right? And I don't think people realize that when you do that, it creates a conflict in yourself, and you start trying to justify it, and it moves you closer to that which you were originally against. Are you familiar with what I'm speaking about? And do you want to touch that?
100% with you. Yeah, and I think this touches directly on what I've been talking about a lot lately. That if too many people that are reporting on the news today, on the state of the world, on everything, don't have a firm understanding of the history of intelligence networks and of people like the CIA. And if you don't have an understanding of the history of a group like the CIA, you don't understand how much time and money they have invested in understanding psychology, in working on literal mind control experiments, on experimenting with drugs, all sorts of different ways that they can affect the way people think, affect the way groups of people work together, affect the media. Like, they've been paying the media to fake stories and to publish skewed narratives since the 60s at least. Like, so a lot of people like have a small amount of understanding of like, yeah, the news is sometimes bullshit, or like, yeah, they're sometimes pushing a narrative. But I think that too many people don't realize the depth of competency that a group like the CIA has at steering all of our collective consciousness through the things that are being put in front of our faces. To, like you say, the self-censorship starts small, but it eventually, like, you don't realize how that quickly migrates to our whole social zeitgeist being edited by us all editing ourselves. And so if all of TikTok has no one talking about how 9/11 has a lot of questions that we never got answered, then it's so easy for everyone to just kind of forget about it and move on to what everyone is talking about, even though there's this huge problem that we still need to sort out, or at least like not forget was not finished, right?
Yeah, well, there's an elephant in the room we need to talk about, right? And it's kind of like COVID, one of those things where it never really gets addressed, right? And everybody knows there's something fucked up about it, but we don't put it in the forefront.
Yeah. And even today, like, as new reporting is coming out, as like the CDC is publishing like whatever 60-page entirely redacted reports on the safety of the vaccine, is like those all the reporting is being done. But like you were saying earlier offline, is like freedom of speech and freedom of reach are not the same thing. And if you allow freedom of speech, so like, yeah, the story can get reported in one tiny little corner of the internet, but it's never going to reach everyone. That is the same as censorship, because the magnitude of the story that is a entirely redacted report on the safety of the COVID vaccine, like, that is monumentally important to every single human on the planet right now. And that story deserves the reach of its importance. Whereas, like, instead, I mean, yeah, like Boeing is an important story, but talking about Boeing's wings falling off gets great clicks and it gets great press and it is important, and like Boeing sucks ass, but it's not the same magnitude of importance in the way that this like redacted vaccine safety report should be. And so having freedom of speech versus freedom of reach is a really subversive concept that we all need to push back on.
Now, usually it's not appropriate in an interview to kind of explain a personal stance, but I kind of feel like I need to really dig in to find where you feel on this matter.
Mm-hmm.
So
no, totally.
When it comes to free speech and when it comes to freedom of reach, right? My personal thought is that freedom of reach or lack thereof is bullshit, right? In the market of ideas, it is my contention that you need the ideas to free flow, right? People need to know what people are saying and what the ideas are. And the people are naturally going to hear those things. Some people may migrate to good shit, but overall, people are going to migrate towards the good ideas. And the marketplace will kind of work itself out, if you will. That's my contention. But you want to go in on that and how you feel about it and what your thoughts are?
I think we're totally aligned on that. I think of it as how capitalism works, and what you're describing is an ideal capitalist society where if the rules are established in a fair and intelligent way, and there's not a bunch of backdoor deals, there's not a bunch of like laws that favor corporations. Like in theory, capitalism allows for goods and services that are of high value to be valued highly, and then there's high demand, and then more of it is done. And in the exact same way, the information space should be a level playing field where everyone's reach is played against the same algorithms, and thereby the stories that everyone is interested in are getting the views that represent the interest. And the critical thing that I think that the freedom of speech versus freedom of reach concept intentionally ignores is that it's not a good thing, but humans are inherently we inherently rely on social proofing to assess the validity of ideas. And I think that like the more intelligent people among us are less inclined to care about social proofing, but the vast majority of humans will value an idea more highly if it has 7 million views. And if a video has, 2,000 views, you probably won't even click on it. And in that way, like that concept alone, I think is universally understandable. Like just go scroll through your own YouTube feed and see how many views the videos you tend to click on have. And furthermore, also the more views, the more it gets pushed, the more it's
right.
And so I think that inherently undermines the concept that freedom of speech versus freedom of reach is still a fair system in the first place. But I mean, kudos to Elon Musk for open sourcing the Twitter algorithm in some regard. Like that, I think is a mandatory first step for any social media platform going forwards. There's no reason why an algorithm that is determining our free flow of ideas should be proprietary. Like it's our public square. And if the public square is gonna function, like you shouldn't be marketing your social media product based upon your secret sauce. You should be marketing it based upon how good it is at facilitating open dialogue and interesting conversations and like attention. And so it's the first step is open sourcing the algorithms, but the second step is actually just equalizing the algorithms to all content, because there's no reason why you should ever be like the only. I will agree with Elon and the whole like, sure, if content is illegal, I'm totally for taking down content that is literally illegal.
Sure.
But if we were to take his words at face value, then everything else that is not illegal should be treated with an equal algorithmic playing field. Otherwise, you are actively censoring, because we all depend upon social proofing to gauge information.
Right. And
that's how I see it.
And I agree. As a matter of fact, to add to that, I would suggest that the fact that not only do they control the reach, that means they kind of get to dictate who gets to sit on top of the pyramid, right? Because they get to push. So it doesn't necessarily mean the best idea is winning out. It means that the message that they want to go out there goes out there. And therein lies the rub.
100%. I mean, it's honestly not, it's just a modern way of having a media outlet choose who gets airtime. Like, if you don't say what we want you to say, we'll take your show off air. Like, sorry, Tucker, you're saying no war a few too many times. Bye bye to your show. Ironically, that's backfired pretty hard on them because they don't fucking understand the modern media landscape. And now he's got a bigger platform, but that's the same idea. Is like, now we're just taking the concept of deplatforming people and putting it into an algorithm and divorcing the size of audience from the value of message.
So
I honestly don't know how I haven't been more affected by that deplatforming. Like, honestly, a lot of people in my comments will speculate that I'm a Fed because I've not been like wildly, like I've dealt with a lot of suppression, but I've still managed to succeed and grow a really big platform really quickly. And if I was looking in from the outside, I would have the exact same question. I'd be like, who the fuck is this guy and why is he not deplatformed? And should I be concerned? Because it's kind of weird. I don't know, like, I don't believe that it's because I'm like so good at it that I've like managed to break through it. I don't know what it is. I mean, I think there is part of that where, like, if we collectively want an idea to succeed and it's presented in a way that is effective enough, I think that inherently sharing and like the tools we have available to us as citizens to share content and to engage with content, like, I think we can kind of defeat the reach versus speech thing, but it's an uphill battle in a big way.
Right. So, I wanted to kind of speak to what you had just said. Personally, right, when I first started looking into you, because I kind of, when you first came aboard, right, and I'm like, oh, I like this guy's shit, and you're like, no, that's me, I am me, and blah, 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 and it's like, yo, dude, what's up? But at first, I was skeptical of you too, right? I'm like, is this dude a fucking Fed, right? Because he's everywhere, and his message is everywhere, and it's not being touched. Is he being used to kind of navigate a message, right? And
No.
I did my own looking, and I didn't see anything that showed that to be the case, right? But that's just me looking into it. Other people's mileage may vary. I suggest everyone look into it because, you don't know until you see for yourself, right? I'm Dowling Thomas. Let me see the scars,
Exactly. Trust no one, verify everything. Even like your most trusted online influencers and sources, like, you should still take everything that everyone says as just their opinion, and you should double check all their sources. You should do all the research for yourself as much as you have time to do, and you should always be prepared for anyone to make mistakes and or be a piece of shit. Like the whole the whole Middle Eastern war thing right now has done a lot of, and like, regardless of which side of it you're on, it's done a lot of exposing people that were pushing like this one strong narrative, and then like, it turns out that actually it's that one strong narrative unless you have this one other thing that like is actually a greater allegiance for me. And so you never know. Like, I guess I'm not saying you never know, but like, you should settle your beliefs about a person on the internet or about a source, or like, you should always be ready for people to change, for people to let you down, for people to evolve into better people. Like, right now, I'm really watching Chris Cuomo as a person who I've detested in a huge way for quite some time, a total piece of shit. And his reporting through COVID was absolutely atrocious.
Agreed.
But he kind of hit rock bottom once they fired him. And I've been watching his interviews since his rock bottom experience and his exit from the mainstream and entering into podcasting spaces. And I've been repeatedly impressed by, like, sure, he's still a leftist, and like, sure, he still is pushing that point of view, but he's really like changed his tune in a lot of ways. And I'm excited to see, like, I think there's no more powerful red pill, so to speak, than people getting to watch someone from their side slowly move to center by being pushed out by their own party. And I think that that's what happened with Tucker in a lot of ways. I mean, like, the right, the Trumpers, all of them were already so much more ready to question the narrative and to move to center and to have more open discussions. But then when, like, essentially the war party kicked Tucker out, that took a huge swath of like classical Republicans and got them asking a lot of questions along with him, which was kind of already his MO. But I'm excited for a world where more of our mainstream propaganda artists say the wrong thing, get pushed out of the propaganda machine, and then slowly take their various groups to center. That's my hope.
See, now with what you're talking about there, I'm moving forward very cautiously because I'm seeing obviously the left eat itself, right? And I'm like a 90s 2000 liberal, right? I got pushed into conservatism basically, right? Like they just went so fucking
Same.
crazy that there was no other place to go,
Yeah.
right? But with that being said, I'm also
Yeah.
seeing people like Anna Kasparian and what's old boy super Trump derangement syndrome guy, Mark fucking whatever his nuts is, right? Um,
Oh, there's too many of those
Yeah.
to name.
but the point being is I'm seeing all these people from the left basically realizing that there's no one over there left to grift to, right? Like the extreme left has broken all that shit, right? So there's no audience
Yeah.
to play to, and I'm worried that we might see essentially like when somebody leaves California and they go to Texas, right? They leave California because it's a shithole, but then they try to establish California in Texas, right? And I'm wondering if that's what we're going to see from these people in the marketplace of ideas, because conservatives are so quick to be like, yeah, they came to our side, yeah. But it's like, well, there's a lot that comes with that.
That's a good point. I mean, my hope, my thesis, I guess, what I think is happening here is the classical media space is very much a controlled platform space, right? Like you have a TV show on this network that's paid for by billionaire, like super mega corporations, and that is a entirely fictional landscape for discussion. Like that's a landscape where everyone on the show is vetted, every conversation is predetermined. Like it's not actually a debate of ideas. And when someone actually gets in and manages to have like a controversial concept or idea, often they'll cut the show off the air or like cut to commercials, and so regardless, like that is the worst case scenario for the marketplace of ideas. And what I see is, like, for example, a person like Chris Cuomo, who's now sitting on on the Patrick Bet Davis podcast, Patrick Bet David, and there's a little more conservative ideas getting thrown around at that table, for example, and he's bringing in a more liberal take. But now he's in a space where it's the best idea wins. And once you're in a open dialogue format, you're no longer on controlled platforms where everything is preordained. It's just like, then it's just a free speech space where you say your part, I'll say my part, and whoever people hear more reason from will win more minds. And so I think that inevitably there will be a lot of weird mixing of the pot and a lot of weird like sloshing of ideas back and forth that kind of pull people into weird sort of camps for a little bit. But I think inevitably once you open the playing field and like decentralize the control over the narratives and allow humans to just listen and speak over and over, like that's how communication, that's how the Academy of Ideas was built. That's how every bit of human knowledge that has led us to having these computers that we can talk across the world to each, like all of our technology and all of our modern innovation and scientific understanding, it all comes from humans having discussions about reality and the best idea winning out, the most provable idea winning out. Like that's the most fundamental part of being a society and being a human. And so getting rid of the controlled media space where the preordained narratives win out and allowing us to get back to like the best idea speaks the loudest. I mean, I see it as nothing but a net positive for humanity, even if there's little issues along the way, so to speak.
Which brings us to a nice little segue, since you brought up Patrick Bet David, is the whole Candice Owens, Ben Shapiro, and everything that comes with that, which that's right in your field. So I definitely want to address all of this with you as much as you're comfortable with, of course. So usually you're a very calm, relaxed dude. I've seen you lose a little bit of your cool sometimes online because you're passionate about this area. So I don't want to speak for you.
Yeah, do you mean in my tweets?
What's that? Yeah. But I don't want to.
You mean in my tweets? Oh, I get fiery on Twitter.
I want you to talk, and so I'm going to shut the fuck up, and you let's start from the ground.
Yeah, I mean, there's sort of two starting points where I entered that storyline. One is that I've obviously known of Candice Owens' platform for forever. Like, I've known of the Daily Wire for forever. And when I was first kind of red pilling myself, I actually was listening to a lot of Ben Shapiro and like hearing this like intense intellect that he has that was so absent on the right or on the left that I had sort of like just defaulted into from my upbringing. And hearing Ben Shapiro so like eloquently shut liberals down was just this like brain break for me at first, having never really thought about the world much and just lived in a liberal town in a liberal state with a liberal family. And so at first, when I was like opening my brain, Ben Shapiro was actually a huge influence on me of just realizing that like, oh, the other side has smart people that have good ideas. Even though not all of his ideas were or are good, it was still like I couldn't help but respect the nature of the debate that he was, you know, a little too violent about sometimes. But so I've sort of have this background in like I've seen Candice's content and I've seen Ben Shapiro's content. I've seen all that stuff. I've seen a lot of the Daily Wire stuff they've been doing ever since, and a lot of it's great. A lot of it's not my personal take, but it's still I always have a lot of respect for anyone that can argue their point effectively with sources or facts, even if it's not my perspective. It's like I just want more people outside of the paid media landscape, like outside of the corporate land, which is an ironic thing to say now. We'll get to that. But but as long as you're like contributing to the conversation from your viewpoint, like cool, I'm with it, even though I might not agree. And then I just stumbled into the whole thing like by accident because I was reporting on the Diddy case and I made a connection. Actually, my followers in my comments made the connection of the Diddy to Michael Jackson via Fahim Muhammad. And I started digging into that, made a video about Fahim Muhammad and his connections to Michael Jackson. And that went super viral on Twitter. And Candice Owens picked it up. And she actually like was super high integrity and didn't just like take my clips out of context and she like fully quoted me and like name dropped me and did me a real service as a content creator on her show. And it was really humbling and I really appreciate her for it. And she did a great show about the Michael Jackson connection. And that just sort of fell in the middle of her sort of longer storyline with the Daily Wire and with Rabbi Shmuley attacking her and all this other shit that I was not really aware of at the time. So I was like, in sort of just some back channels like, hey, I appreciate it, like great reporting with her. And then like that week, the next week, this whole Daily Wire thing starts to blow up. So I was naturally on Team Candice. I mean, I was on Team Candice beforehand because I don't agree with all of her takes, but I really agree with her integrity and her reporting. And absolutely. I could tell anytime that it's like a company versus an individual, I'm going to need some strong evidence that the individual is the wrong one and the company is the right one. And in this case, all the evidence points to Candice being you don't have to agree with her opinions, but I'm just saying that she believes her opinions, that she's speaking authentically from her own perspective as a journalist that feels high integrity. And she might be wrong about some things, but that's not the same as being a low integrity journalist. And the Daily Wire is messaging all over the field with all kinds of weird, like, I mean, anytime that Israel comes into a discussion, it's pretty rare for me to see Israel enter a discussion where there's not like some other money being involved or it's just some other allegiances that are kind of being like not covered up, but just not people not being forthright with the fact that like looking at all of the side by sides of Ben Shapiro having one opinion on free speech like a year ago and then literally saying the exact opposite thing about Candice Owens and her take on Israel or her take on Christianity today is just so hilarious and so bizarre. And sure, like, yeah, they're a platform that can totally platform whatever news and reporters they want. They don't have to give Candice a job. And I don't think that anyone is critiquing the Daily Wire for like attacking freedom of speech. It's just the hypocrisy that is so fully on display in front of all of our eyes that if you're going to build this America First platform that's all about saying the real thing and having nothing held back and everything's fair game and like real reporting, and then the moment that reporting is critical of Israel, it's like, well, hold up, like let's pause and cut that it's just ridiculous. And it's coming in the middle of this sort of like mass global realization that like everyone has their own take on Israel and Palestine, and everyone has their own level of education about it. But it's hard to argue that, you know, most people have learned a lot of things about that situation and about the media situation relative to Israel, about the money situation in our Congress relative to Israel. Just most people didn't really realize the level of influence that that country has over what's happening here in our backyard. And the Daily Wire is a perfect example of one where, like, had none of this ever come up, no one would have ever realized that it was actually not exactly America first. It was kind of like America first because we never talk about what else is actually first.
Yeah, and I actually want to get really into that, to be honest with you, is that how
I'm happy to.
lopsided that is, you know, how lopsided it is for the critiques, right? Because it's my contention, and again, that, you know, if, and I don't really have a stance overall, right? Like, I believe that people and civilians, you know, and it shouldn't be slaughtered, period, right? If Israel wants to go after Hamas, I'm good with that. But go after fucking Hamas, right? You can't carpet bomb the whole fucking place and squeeze them up against Egypt and then pretend like you're the good guy. To me, there's a problem there, right? So that's where my issue is. But if you have a critique like that, then they want to go like all Kanye on you, right? They'll find that one thing and all of a sudden it's like, you know, you're anti-Semitic or whatever. No, you know, I have nothing against Jewish people. There's plenty of Jewish people that I know that I absolutely love, you know, but the critique. So, yeah. So let's dive into that, if we will. Enough talking from me.
Yeah.
I want to hear you.
It's such an open, like, rabbit hole. And I have a really funny sort of like storyline with it, because I was not educated about Israel and Palestine at all. And I grew up, so I was born in the like early 90s, and I grew up like through times when I was young and there was reporting on other like conflicts back in the 2000s that were going on over there, and it would come through the news and I would just hear like rockets in Israel and Palestine, and I had no conception of what was going on, even though it was often on the news. And it occurred to me, I was doing YouTube content earlier this year, and it was when I got to 9/11, and I knew there was this like Israel angle in 9/11 that was in these FBI reports that I hadn't fully like read yet and reported on. And as I read them, I realized like, all right, I got to talk about, you can't talk about 9/11 and not talk about the Israel angle in some regard. But then this was before October 7th. And I also realized like, like I'm about to expose my channel to the anti-Semitism smear, because even though these are real FBI reports, and these are very much like it's not even my opinion, this is just in the reports, like I knew that was super dangerous for my channel to talk about. And so I decided to pause the 9/11 coverage for a second, rewind, and get educated about Israel and Palestine, because I wanted to just really understand the context of what I was stepping into, and make sure I felt educated enough in my stance to stand by whatever amount of stance I was going to take before I reported on the whole Israel and 9/11 thing. And this was like end of September, beginning of October. And I filmed I did a ton of research, and I naturally wound up like going back to the beginning of Israel and going back to like, I mean, honestly, a lot of Norman Finkelstein, he's the GOAT, and just learning a lot about Hasbara and about the founding of Israel. And like, I mean, I am no expert by any means, but I made a whole video about the Israel and Palestine conflict. And I naturally tend to skew towards the underdog in any conflict. Like if one is a nuclear power backed by the United States of America's empire, and the other is a bunch of like people throwing rocks, I'm probably going to skew towards the people throwing rocks. I'm a younger brother, and sure, sometimes the people throwing rocks do bad things, but like a little bit of content, like, you know, some perspective. And so I put out in my locals channel, I think on October 5th, this big video about the history of Israel and mostly about the nature of their capabilities as a propaganda like force in the world, because Israel has a long history dating way back to realizing that for them, the most important thing all along has been public perception, not actually like military might or other things. Because for them, it's like, if you want to insert your state into the Middle East. I mean, there was already lots of Jews living in Palestine. Palestine was like a perfectly fine place with Jews and Christians and Muslims living all together. Like it wasn't a problem between anyone until they were trying to create an ethnic state within that landscape. And it was built out of wars and subversion and terrorism and all sorts of other things. And so they knew early on that like we need to control the global perspective on this, especially because Mossad and CIA were very linked up from the beginning, because the CIA had no idea what it was doing and they needed help, and Mossad helped. They were very, and so it just, the evolution naturally led to Israel being extremely concerned with the global narrative about Israel. And that has evolved over time into what we all know today as this weird blanket of anti-Semitism. And it wasn't actually that exposed for us until October 7th, because it just seems fringe. And like, yeah, Kanye West was being anti-Semitic. He was literally like praising Hitler. Yep. And that's, and it's like, yeah, don't do that. You're a fucking idiot, bro. Hitler was not a good dude.
Exactly.
But it's easy for people not to dig any deeper than that. Like the Michael Jackson one is a great example where like, yeah, he said a lot of things that were like not great, but also it kept people from looking into it more and being like, oh, but he was saying like, he was criticizing how he has all these Jewish people coming after his money. And that's just factual. Like he was an artist who's like the top 4 executives that ruled his life were all Jewish, and they were coming for his money, and he was fighting with Sony. So it's just like a lot of complexity that we have historically. Exactly. He was taking Sony down. Like that whole story is so crazy. And then he got smeared as a child sex offender, which I don't think he was.
Same.
So before October 7th, most of us never dug past the anti-Semitic labels. And it was this really effective, like blanket term. And it paused me on my channel. I was like, I fully stopped what I was doing and did a whole other investigation because I knew I was about to destroy my channel by being called anti-Semitic just for reporting on real FBI files. And so ironically, unfortunately, it's a terrible thing what happened and all the death that's happened since. But I published that on like October 5th. And then I think I published it on YouTube on the 7th, 8th. And so the moment that broke, it was like this veil was lifted off of everyone's eyes. And sure, it's still a shit storm and it's still a flame war between the two perspectives there. But now like we're having discussions that have never been had before. And now people are freer to criticize this like ethno state, this lobbying situation in our government, this just like whole situation that has been completely, I mean, I hate to go there, but like it's the meme of like, if you want to know who controls you, look at who you can't talk about. Yep. And I'm not saying that like Jews control the world. I'm say exactly right. I'm just saying that like Israel has been very effective at creating cycles of money and power and warfare that feed itself. Like we give them $5 billion a year, they give back 200 million a year to buy all the people that give them 5 billion a year. Like that's completely transparent and out in the open. And then I started digging into it, and I like went back to the original source documents from when AIPAC was supposed to register as a foreign agent, like under FARA, which is how all foreign lobbying groups are supposed to be registered. Israel, like AIPAC brags on their website that they represent Israel, but they're not registered under FARA. And if you go back to the original documents from when they were going to be registering under FARA, it was during JFK's presidency, and JFK and his administration were coming down hard. And if you read the actual source documents, it's like month by month by month, it gets closer and closer and closer until the month of JFK's death. The documents were sent, and Israel had, or rather AIPAC had received the documents to register under FARA. And then JFK dies out of nowhere. And the next letter is AIPAC sending a letter being like, that's cool, but we're not going to register under FARA. Cool. And it just to this day is that. So it's like
you have
things
a very
like that
good video
that
on
are just.
That, by the way, if a handful of people
Thank
watch
you,
this
yeah.
and they want
I was
to know
really
more
psyched
about
on
that,
one.
like there is a video that he did on it, and it covers it way better than where we're going. But
and that speaks to like my general strategy, because a lot of what I talk about is so controversial. A lot of what I talk about can be politicized, can be divisive. And I intentionally try to always go to primary sources, try to access actual documents, actual FBI files, actual source material. Because if you're like accessing a CNN report about what something said, I mean, you're already skewed, and oftentimes CNN is citing CNN as its source in the first place. And so being able, like, it's I mean, it's just the scientific method. It's the most basic thing. I learned it in like 7th grade history classes. You need primary sources. And at the time I hated it. And I was like, fuck you, teacher. It's a lot of work. I don't want to go to a primary source. I can't read Old English. But now looking back, I'm like, dude, I get it, because you don't know what is actually going on if your source has been filtered through 5 different people's opinion on its way to this person who's just spouting off their opinion about someone else's opinion. But when you read the actual letters that were being sent back and forth between AIPAC and the US government, it's very clear what was going on. And I don't know what happened to JFK. I mean, I don't know, but it's really obvious that the moment he died, AIPAC was like, oh, cool. We're never going to register. It's not a big deal, guys. Don't worry about it. And to this day, you know, they lobby our entire Congress. I actually got into a bit of a debate, not debate, like a conversation with my elder boomer parents the other day about Israel's lobbying power in Congress. And they more or less hold my stance on Israel-ish. They're not very informed. They don't have time to be as informed. But my dad was like taken aback when I said that Israel pays the vast majority of our Congress people to be pro, like, you know, for whatever reason, who knows? And he was like, no, it's not that many. It's like they pay some of them, but it's not that many. It's like, it's most of them. It's like a lot of them.
I was surprised to find out how many.
And they brag about it openly. Yeah.
That's surprising stuff.
Yeah, I've done a fair bit of digging into. I did a really fun video about how there's this misconception that they're paying these politicians and the money's going into the politician's pocket to make the politician rich. And it's actually way more deep than that and way more interesting, because what they're doing is they're paying the campaign of the politician to get them elected. And so when you actually look at the mechanics of who's receiving the most money, the people that receive the most money aren't actually the ones that are like, it's not a 1-to-1 correlation of like the most pro-Israel or the most this or that. It's actually the ones that are like seats that are the most important and the most contested are the seats that receive the most money. Like last in the 2022 cycle, the woman who received the most money, she received it because her opponent was on the Israeli Times list of the top 5 most anti-Israel candidates in the US Congress. And so actually this more than $1 million that was paid for this one seat, I think in New York, it wasn't actually necessarily because they wanted the person that won it. It was more so because they needed to defeat the person that was running against her. And there's mechanics like that all across the board of Israeli lobbying money, where what they're actually doing is they're buying the seats, and then those politicians can use those seats for the prestige, for the, you know, for the insider trading. They can get rich off those seats in all those other ways, but they're not like literally, I mean, well, officially they're not literally putting the Israeli money into their pockets. I'm sure that there's, you know, some lunches where some envelopes change. I'm sure there's other ways that money can exchange hands.
Well, of course.
But the official lobbying money
office,
is
right. Everybody gets speaker fees and everybody gets these comfy positions.
Yeah.
Look what happened to with
revolving door.
Carrie Lake, right? Like, hey, don't run. What do you want?
Yeah.
You want to be on TV? Name your price. You know, like that should open a lot of eyes.
Exactly. And that's a critical. That's where. Like, it's so easy to sound conspiratorial, but like when you actually look at the facts, it's like, yeah, Israel has a lot of influence in most mainstream media companies. And so that allows them to have the revolving door to say like, hey, once you're out of office, I got a cushy gig for you here. Or like and it's not like they necessarily have to own the company literally. You just have to have a good enough relationship with that CEO to be like, hey, after this guy gets out of office, you're going to make him a commentator. Or you've got a cushy relationship with the defense contractor. You're like, after this guy gets off of that committee, why don't you just put him on the board of Lockheed Martin? That'd be great, right? Or vice versa. And so it's just this like network of influence, which is very Mossad. I mean, it's very CIA. That's what intelligence agencies are all about, is networks of influence and friendship that all work together. And they're not literally hired by the CIA or by Mossad. They're just, they're just associates. They're just people that are doing their thing in the corporate world, doing their thing in the government world, and they're friends, and they, help each other out. That's how intelligence networks have always worked since the beginning, because the whole point is plausible deniability. That's the point of an intelligence agency, of a covert operation in general. And so you wouldn't want them to be working for the CIA. You would want them to be not working for the CIA, so that if they got caught doing what they were doing on behalf of the CIA, it doesn't blow back. And that's always been the way it works. And so people often criticize when someone speculates that someone is working for the CIA or someone is a Mossad front or whatever it is, because they don't realize that that's
Hold on. I don't know what happened.
For the CIA.
Hold on. Time out.
Purpose.
I don't know if you can hear me. I don't know if it's your start.
Yeah, you're a little frozen for me.
But you just froze and it all freaked out for a second.
Yeah.
So let's hold on, because the screen's stuck, bro. I think he said Mossad too many times.
No. Yeah, for real. I said Mossad too many times on Google.
Dude, yeah, you sound like fucking...
First time that something is cut out.
There you go.
I've broken Twitter Spaces a few times talking about Mossad.
Yeah. All right, you're back.
But anyways, I could rant about that for forever.
So what was the moment that got you interested into actually scrutinizing things? Because you seem well adjusted, right? You seem like you came from parents that actually gave a shit about you and paid attention to you, right? So
yeah,
what made you just scrutinize things to a higher degree than people tend to? Because it's not as common as people think it is.
That's a good question. I mean, kind of the layman way of saying what you're saying is what moment was my red pill? Yeah. What was the moment when I left the Matrix or left the
to associate it with
it's such a charged word. Yeah, I think that people misunderstand the original concept of red pill as being red versus blue, right and left. It's a Matrix reference, guys. It's a reference to take the blue pill and stay in the Matrix, or take the red pill and wake up to the truth. But we can't have nice things, so it has to be political. But the thing that started it for me, it was a series of things. When COVID first hit, I was a nice, ignorant, and I'm not saying liberals are ignorant always. Lots of people are ignorant, but I was a liberal who was ignorant. And I was just, and it's not because I was just not paying attention. I was just living my life, doing my things in my community. I was a rock climbing instructor and a teacher. I was going to school. I was just doing other things. And COVID hit. And at first I was totally with it. I was on board. I was posting on Facebook about how we should us young people should take this really seriously for the betterment of everyone. And I think I didn't even question that too much at first. I was just observing, and I had all this time to research. And as a teacher, I knew that I should take all this time to better myself. And so I started designing curriculum for myself. I spent the first 6 months of COVID teaching myself French and geography, and did a workout plan and just all kinds of things to just keep myself busy, art projects. And then Black Lives Matter happened. And I'm in Washington State at the time. And Black Lives Matter in Washington State was Black Lives Matter everywhere was a very strange cognitive dissonance. And it was just such a great example of a concept that has perfectly legitimate grievances, a movement that totally has legitimate people with legitimate things to say, that really obviously got hijacked by something else partway through. And I was living in a communal house with a bunch of roommates at the time, and we were having discussions about this amongst ourselves. And they were going to protests and putting up signs in the front yard. And I was just I don't feel comfortable, even though I was very liberal at the time, but I was I don't feel comfortable going to this protest and being a part of this mob, because I don't actually know what that mob is going to represent by 2 a.m, right? Because I had been watching the live streams and seeing, I saw the pallets of bricks on the live streams. And I had been, conspiratorial enough from my perspective to sort of see what I was seeing and be this is fucking weird.
And you could smell it.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, I had also watched the live streams from the 2020 election night. I had watched the midnight footage of all the weird things 20 election, and I had lots from that still. And so watching the whole Black Lives Matter thing evolve into what looked pretty clearly, I mean, at the time I wasn't well educated about it, but even then it looked like a CIA or like an intelligence agency subversion of a movement, or even a Russian subversion of a movement. Who can, like a subversion of a movement. And that got me asking a lot of questions. And that sort of broke my mind open. And simultaneous to that, I was investing in GameStop through the 2021 GameStop happened in the financial world. And I caught word of that like right after that first explosion with it, and jumped on board with it very quickly after that February, not from the concept of making money, but from the concept of like, oh shit, dude, this is like a legitimate movement of normal people taking on Wall Street. And I'm fucking here for it. And I was working at restaurants. So COVID money was just flowing into my account for no work. And I'm like, I'm going to buy all this GameStop with that money, obviously. And so tracking GameStop and watching all the financial fuckery that community was unearthing in real time, very long, complex story, but that really got my brain working on like the bigger picture, on the financial aspect, on how money really does control everything. And so it was sort of like the breaking of the adopted liberal beliefs that I had grown up with, paired with being a part of this GameStop community that was actively doing these deep dives called due diligence into the financial world, and reading this due diligence by all these very intelligent financial experts that I could like read and understand, but was not smart enough to do that digging for myself. It sort of started to inspire me in the back of my mind to be like, why can't, like, I'm smart, like I should be able to understand these things on my own. I should be able to do this kind of research on my own. Why can't I? And it's because I'm not putting forth the time and putting forth the like my own desire to learn. And so as that kind of all came together into 2023, like I was looking for a change in my life and like needed a new career path. It's like everything kind of swirled around to like, dude, just start doing the research for yourself. Like just start learning. And posting videos about it is a great way to, like, the best way to teach or to learn is to teach. And if you can teach a thing, you can learn, like if you've learned it well enough, you can teach it. And if you can teach it, you learned it well enough. And so I used the TikTok channel as like a as like a cycle of committing myself to learning a thing. And then I have to learn it well enough to explain it. And if I explained it well, that meant I learned it well and I internalized it better. I took the notes on it. And then it just fucking took off.
Okay. And that makes sense, right? And that, I guess that kind of really lays out your method too, right? Because if you're figuring it out and you're teaching it, you need a system to break it down.
I mean, really the heart of, I think that a lot of people that see my stuff at face value, it's easy to misinterpret it as like my goal, the purpose is to project a message or to teach people things or to like, yeah, in some ways, but actually my goal, like the most fundamental goal of what I'm doing is to lead by example, the process of learning for yourself. Like the process of like, we live in 2024. You don't need anyone to teach you anything. You can teach yourself anything you want. You can learn, you can Google, you can research. And so the whole point from the start was like, I am not an expert. I'm a dude that knows nothing. And you're about to watch me learn things one piece at a time. I'm going to get lots of stuff wrong. I'll talk about it when I get wrong. I'll learn from you guys. I'll learn from you, whatever. I'll change my mind. And just showing, I mean, because the other thing we need more of is like the humility to not pretend like we all know everything. Like, shut the fuck up. No one knows everything. Even a total expert doesn't know everything. And so I think that that is probably a big part of why my platform speaks to a lot of people, is because we've gone through a collective experience of realizing that in some ways the experts are the most likely ones to be bought. Like, we used to think that experts were the most intelligent, and sure they are, but they're also the ones that have gone through the most captured education systems. Like the financial world is a great example where most people don't necessarily realize that the financial system of higher education in colleges is entirely funded by the financial system that they're supposed to be becoming the regulators of. They're supposed to be becoming the journalists in it. They're supposed to be becoming the people that would hold that financial system to account. And they're being educated by programs that are completely funded by that financial system to learn that this is all normal. Don't question any of it. It's all good. And so the experts, especially in realms like the finance and the health, they're the ones that are the most captured. And even if they've even the ones that aren't being overtly paid to continue the capture, they're also just educated in a captured way. But then a lot of them grow up to have these prominent positions that we think they're the experts, but they're the perfect target to get paid money to say whatever they are told to say. They are the ones that have been elevated to those positions. Yeah, so we all are collectively experiencing this sort of loss of faith in and that inherently leads us to look for our own voices from the people. And I think that my underlying, what I'm kind of long-windedly getting at here, is that we are all that. It's not like we need to be experts to have conversations. It's not like we need to know everything to get involved and to try to learn more. And so I just am trying to show the process of just as an earnest human who is not, it's not about ego. It's not about views. It's just about I want to know more. So I'm going to look it up. And this is what I figured out. Tell me if I'm wrong. And if I'm wrong, we'll talk about it and I'll learn from that. And that's a good thing. And so there's an element of I want to model that humility for young men in general. Cause we all need to be a little less dick measuring about how much you know online and a little more humility to just have conversations. And also just the strength to be I don't need anyone else to tell me what's real because I'm smart enough to learn how to figure it out for myself. And even if you're not smart enough today, the act of practicing figuring it out will make you better at figuring it out. And even if you're dumb as fuck today, if you start thinking for yourself right now, in 3 years, you'll be less dumb than you were today.
Absolutely.
And I'm the perfect example of someone who's less dumb than I was a year ago. But I'm definitely not smart yet.
Right on. And some people might disagree with you, but that's only because they haven't done their own research, right? So
exactly. It depends on what field we're talking about.
The Jimmy Dore spot about doing your own research, because it's fucking brilliant. And it encompasses everything.
Such a critical piece.
People tried to get informed about that. Other people shamed them. They would say, please tell me you're not going to do your own research. You've heard people say that. Please don't do your own research. You know, before COVID, doing your own research used to be called reading. Now you're shaming me for reading? At the behest of Big Pharma? It's like I woke up in the middle of a Bill Hicks bit. Well, looks like we got ourselves a reader. Tell me, boy, what you reading for? Don't you know everything that needs to be readed's already been readed by a smart person? That's how much people internalized the propaganda from Big Pharma, was that they would be anti-intellectual enough to shame people for reading while they're wagging their finger at them for doing it. You would never shame people for trying to get informed, no matter what other subject it was, no matter how unimportant. Like if I say, hey, I'm gonna go buy a car. Don't look into it. Well, how will I know which car to get? Ask the salesman. He's the expert. What are you, Henry Ford?
Right, dude? Like, I hope you end up like fucking getting on Dore's show, dude. Because I think that would be.
Jimmy's a legend.
Yeah, the guy's solid.
Yeah, so, I do have a secret list that I don't talk about of people who I intend to meet and have podcasts with and talk with and shake hands with. Like, all these people that were Goliaths in my mind for so long that I'm like, yeah, like I'll meet you. Like I'll talk with you. Like we're all humans, and like, you know, the world's not so small anymore.
You know, since we're on that, if I want to bring up something. So you brought Johnny Vidmore to my attention through your recommendation. I believe it was in a space. You had mentioned him. So me being who I am, I went down the Johnny tube, right? And first off, the guy's fucking brilliant, dude. He has short-term and long-form content, but like you got to buckle in for his long-form content, dude, because like he'll go down some fucking rabbit holes, and you got to watch it twice sometimes, you know. Anyways, so I started following and interacting with Johnny, and just through like passing, you know, he replies to comments and whatnot, and you came up, you know, and I was like, have you ever asked like Ian to come on your show? And he was like, well, I don't know if he would. And I was like, well, I don't want to speak for him, but I'm pretty sure he's a fan, you know. So I don't know, maybe you guys should talk if that's something that interests you, because it sounded to me, you know, he didn't, you know, it came across as like he would be totally fucking game for it, and I'd love to see it as a.
Yeah, Johnny's cool.
Now.
Yeah, I think that it's hard for me to keep up with all the direct messages and to keep up with all the various things I could be like saying yes to and interacting with. I'm guilty of really cool people that I really wish I was collaborating with right now that I just forgot to reply to, or like whatever it is. But also I think there's also this weird, like, we're all programmed to sort of think in terms of like social clout and stuff and be like, oh, I don't know if like I can get on that show or like that interview, or it's like, bro, we're all just people, we're all just humans, and we all disagree on things, we all agree on things. Johnny is a great example of someone who, like, I disagree with him on a lot of his takes, and I'm sure he disagrees with me on a lot of my takes, but he's a great investigative reporter, a great investigative journalist, and his reporting was foundational to a lot of my first understanding. I found him when I was first looking into Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum, and he's done so many great deep dives on that and on Epstein and such that, like, I was reading his articles front to back with no conception that I ever might get to meet this dude. And then when I got on Twitter, I was like, oh my gosh, he's here on Twitter. Like, what's up, dude? And so it's so cool to have gotten out of just the TikTok world and into the Twitter world where like all the adults are. So now it's like the conversation can be full circle, and it's not just me reading someone's reporting, but actually then we're on the Epstein space together, using that reporting to go deeper and go further.
And another person, if I will, I knew who she was, but now I actually have her 2 books on order. Whitney Webb, who, like, she is
Whitney Webb is a real legend.
Yeah, she is the definitive source when it comes to Epstein. I mean, that is her territory, and I don't think anybody has it laid out the way she has. And I don't even know why I never even bothered to go read those books until you were talking about them the other day on stream, because I've seen all her appearances online. I've watched everything I can on her. She is a fucking, like, phenomenon.
She's an encyclopedia,
dude, and she's so
right?
Just calm.
Yeah. And the funny thing too is that she's certainly a definitive source on Epstein and all of that history. But I think that too many people don't actually go to unlimitedhangout.com and actually read her other reporting about the current stuff going on, because she's a definitive source on things like the future of cyber control of our lives, the things about globalists and technologists trying to maneuver policy to meet really weird agendas that harken back to a lot of the things that she reported on in the Epstein saga. But also she does a lot of forwards looking on unlimitedhangout.com that everyone should go and read, because she has the ability to, like, all of that encyclopedic knowledge of the background of what's already happened informs her to be able to look at what's happening today and realize what really matters and what is kind of just like fluff stories that everyone else can report on. And like, she focuses her attention really specifically on things that have the potential to be the most important from now or 2 years from now. Whereas a lot of us are just like chickens with our heads cut. Whatever bridge has just collapsed. No, like, you know, I don't want to make light of that situation, but just the way that we all all us mortals sort of just let the wind blow us to whatever story's happening. And Whitney is like continually on her own beat, cutting her own trail through the muck towards some really important things to talk about. So unlimitedhangout.com is one that, and Johnny Vedmore has been a contributor there for a long time too, where I go to that website every week or so and just catch up on all of the reporting to make sure I'm not missing it. Because there's a few sites like that out there. That one and Wall Street on Parade are the two that I go to out of the blue just to make sure I've caught up on all their articles, because those are some damn good journalists.
See, I've never been to either of them, so those are two places I can tell you I'm going to go binge just because you recommended them. So,
yeah, Wall Street on Parade is really cool because it's. I got first cued into Wall Street on Parade in the GameStop saga because for some reason Reddit has banned all links to this website. And it like Reddit was doing all kinds of weird censorship around GameStop, like accounts getting suspended, things you couldn't talk about. They were making it so that the subreddit that was talking about GameStop wasn't allowed to make any links or references to other subreddits so that the discussion would never bleed over to the rest of Reddit. So everyone had to stay in their little bubble, like really obviously arbitrarily trying to contain the discussion. And there was this rule all along that like you could link to any outside site you wanted from that subreddit, but you could not post links to Wall Street on Parade. And I'm like, why the f is that? And eventually I went and looked and I'm like, oh, because these dudes are crushing Wall Street and they do such good reporting that's just like short articles to the point that just spit nothing but facts with sources about how Wall Street is essentially an enormous criminal enterprise. And they got reporting on all the different banks, on like all the different scandals, all the money that they've laundered, the drugs they've smuggled, the fines, the criminal allegations that they have been convicted of. It's a rocking good time to go to Wall Street on Parade.
You know, speaking of the GameStop thing, right? So when that popped off, you know, I like plenty of others like caught wind of it and was like, I didn't know shit about stocks, but I'm all like, hey, I want to be a part of this. It's like a fucking phenomenon, right? Free money, count me in.
Yep.
Dude, they got me so bad. When I start fucking with shit I have no fucking room to touch, you know, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to leave this to the big boys. However, I was involved when, like, Robinhood did their shady shit that day, remember? Like, and that's when I knew, like, to get out. Like, I saw, like, the writing was on the wall, like the system is so broken that if they can't get your money in a legit way, like, they'll just overtly just be like, hey, fuck you, stop it all real quick, and they'll sink you.
Yep. So the crazy thing about GameStop is that that's the story that everyone is most familiar with, and that's the story that all the documentaries focused on. But actually, from my perspective, and I think from the vast majority of our perspective, the real story of GameStop is actually everything that happened since then, because everyone wasn't like committed or super involved or aware of stock markets. They kind of were like in and out. They like bought a little and they were like, oh fuck, this is over, and got out, which is like totally fair because like it's, you know, it was what it was. But the actual like the big question mark there was that once they committed that overt crime in front of everyone and the stock plummeted to $40, and then if the people that held on through that, and then it rose back up, and then there was the hearing in front of Congress where Deep Fucking Value, he said he liked the stock and he would buy it at that price. And then immediately after that hearing, he quadrupled down and bought millions of dollars more of the stock right then and there. And the rest of the GameStop community just literally shit their pants with joy. And so it created this like second wave of momentum that kept everyone in. And because everyone stayed, they all got really motivated to figure out what had happened and what crimes had been committed and how fraudulent is the market if that can all happen in front of our eyes. And like, it's important to remember that the reason why that first ramp happened is because GameStop was being reported as more than 200% short, meaning 100% is all the shares that exist. And so if it's possible to have more than double all the shares that exist have been borrowed somehow, what is a stock in the first place? Right. And the more that the GameStop community started to do that research and dig those rabbit holes, we realized that like, oh, this is not new actually. Like stocks are entirely synthetic, and they are a lie, and the entire market is a giant Ponzi scheme. And actually all the stocks are owned by this central clearing company, which is a corporation run by members of all the big banks, and they own all the stocks, and all that you have is an IOU that is genuinely worthless if they care to not value or honor it. And so they've, ever since that actual initial January situation, there's just been hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages of really high quality due diligence, some of it total tinfoil that's like ridiculous, like just idiots passing time on the internet making up stupid conspiracy theories for fun. And some of it is like extremely intelligent financial professionals really digging into like the numbers of things, how these complex derivatives, like the what collapsed, Credit Suisse, the bank completely collapsed. The GameStop community saw that coming in advance from a mile away, because the GameStop community was already tracking, like when Bill Hwang and his fund, which you might not know about, but it's this other hedge fund that collapsed. He had been deeply shorting GameStop, as well as a couple of other, he was playing all these risky bets in the market, and he was trading with Credit Suisse. And once he exploded, the GameStop community was already like, oh, Credit Suisse is fucked now, because we've been digging into what all those trades were. And so it's this huge amount of actually like exposure of the financial fuckery that's happened ever since that I think is the real story, and it's still happening to this day. And it's so fascinating. I am not as smart as all those people, but I follow them religiously to keep up on what they're exposing. And I'm still holding. I still have all my shares.
Do you think
we've like?
Do you think GameStop?
No, go for it.
Do you think that's ever gonna completely pay off, like, and lay itself out, or do you think that the powers that be and the system is just going to keep trying to find a way to keep that thing running? Because I mean, how the fuck
really
is
good
it still
question.
Going?
Yeah, I mean, the important context there is that at the very least, confirmed, retail investors like myself own 25% of the stock directly registered. Like, we have taken our stocks out of the stock market, registered them with the transfer agent, and they literally like are confirmed at least 25%. But once it hit 25%, because that number was climbing and climbing and climbing as we all registered our shares and took them out over the last 3 years, that number hit 25%, and then mysteriously it flatlined. And the reporting all changed, and the wording that GameStop was reporting in their company reports changed to kind of indicate that there was some weird shit going on behind the scenes. So like, we have pretty strong suspicions that we own, just those of us that are hardcore enough to have been directly registering our stocks, that we probably own well over 25% of the company ourselves. And the shorting has been going on ever since. And so there's a million different perspectives on whether like the monetary, like the mother of all short squeezes will happen. And I go back and forth between whether I actually think it for sure will, or whether it's like here or there, like they have so much power they could destroy it. But like, I don't know. I'm either way on it, and I don't honestly care at this point. Like, the way I look at my GameStop shares, and I think the way most of us do at this point, is we've forgotten all about them. Like, I don't give a fuck. I'm never selling them. Like, you can go fuck yourself, Citadel. Like, I will hold those till the day I die. And enough of us have that perspective that like only a fraudulent market would actually make the stock price go down, because we all, like, at least 25% of the investors have that exact same mentality. And there's no other company in the world that has that mentality. And so if the market was a real market, the price would already be going up because we all love it so much and we're all buying every day. But even if it's fraudulent and they do shit to like try to destroy, it's like, I mean, unless something changes drastically at the company or something, I don't see it really going down in any meaningful way other than fraud. And I'm just going to hold it either way, because most of my shares actually came from free COVID money. And now I'm getting good enough at this content stuff that I'm about to kind of have free money from like YouTube that feels immaterial anyways. And I'll just like keep buying more. Like, I don't care. Like, what else am I going to buy? A bunch of like made up stocks in the stock market that are all about to crash through the floor because like the market, like, fuck, the market's so messed up right now. I'm gonna buy Bitcoin and I'm gonna buy GameStop, and that's it. I'm obviously not a financial professional. If no one could tell, I'm an idiot who makes, great choices with his life. So don't take any of that as financial advice.
Here, speaking, kind of like to touch more on a personal aspect of you, right? Like you alluded to earlier, you
Totally, man.
had a conversation with your parents about Israel and whatnot. Do a lot of your friends and people that you know in your personal life, do they watch your content, or are they kind of oblivious to it to a certain extent, even though, because like nobody I know watches
This is a
my
great
shit,
question.
so,
First off, I don't have a lot of friends because during COVID, I lost them all. I mean, like I didn't lose them all, but like we all went separate ways. I live in a very liberal town, like the kind of liberal that's like would label me as a neo-Nazi never Trumper, despite that being clearly not what I am. And before COVID, that was never a thing. Like I was just friends with all the people that were doing what I did. Like we go rock climbing, we're friends. And since COVID, it's like such a political thing. And it's just, and so my friend groups are actually super small. And the people actually are deeply involved. Like a couple of my friends, I have deep discussions with them about what I'm always doing. Cause I'm just kind of like, this is what I'm talk about. And a lot of them are interested in it too. And even the ones that don't watch it, we still talk about it. But you have some friends, it's always interesting. I've never figured out a good way to tell people what my job is. And I certainly don't care to like brag about it. I think that's ridiculous. And so, for example, I just switched gyms to a new gym where everyone's a total homie and they're super cool, but none of them know what I do yet. It's actually still a secret. And it's going to be hilarious when they do finally ask me what I do, but it's also going to be really awkward because it's always really awkward to be like, well, like, I'm a TikToker. Like,
well, that
it's
my next
a bit
question.
all across the board on that answer.
Yeah.
What's your next question?
No, I said that kind of preempts it because I was gonna wonder, like, do you run into people consistently that know who you are? Because I didn't really tell many people I was gonna have this interview. Like probably about 3-4 people in general, right? One of them just so happened to be a female coworker, and I was like, well, do you pay attention to like TikTok? And she's like, yeah. I was like, do you know who this guy is? And she's like, yeah. I was like, yeah, well, I'm going to have a conversation with him in a day. Like,
he's that shampoo guy.
And,
that's cool.
But, like, she knew who you were, right? And that was just like a random sampling, How many followers do you have overall across your platforms, by the way? Just, do you know?
I have 1.5 million on TikTok and 300,200. I probably have like about 2 million followers across, but it's probably less because a lot of them are the same people on multiple platforms. And I do get recognized sometimes. I've been recognized in the grocery store before. I've been recognized on the street before, but it's not common. I mean, I live up in this like little corner of the world where like not a lot of people are thinking the kinds of things that I'm talking about in the first place. And also, I think that I probably come across out in the real world as less approachable than I do in my videos. Like, I'm a big dude, and I'm always I'm not like hanging out doing nothing out in public. So like, I'm usually like moving or like doing something. I would assume that even people that do recognize me often don't approach me. That's fine. Like, I love to talk to people if people ever do. It's like I'm super game. I don't care. But it's also, I don't know. I think I get annoyed by the way that people are inclined nowadays. Like now I'm meeting people and they know from the start what I do. And I'm annoyed by the fact that that puts a barrier between us and people can put me on a pedestal as though I was like better than them or like cooler than that. And it's like, I'm speaking specifically like my girlfriend recently introduced me to a bunch of homies that are super cool. And it's like, dude, we're just people, bro. Like, don't worry about it, man. Like, we're all just homies. Like, I'm not special. I just am lucky. Like,
and I can vouch for that because I hit you up on like a comment. I'm like, hey, dude, can I like reach out to you about an interview? And you're like, yeah. And the whole way through, you've been, completely just chill on the whole thing. I mean, even down to today, you're like, well, I mean, in an idea, it'd be this, but it could also be this. And it's like, well, I'm asking you for the interview, and you're laying like these options out for me, which kind of speaks to, just how level you are. Like the shit's not in your head. You don't seem to be conceited. You know, you're very approachable. You know, which I appreciate because you know, for someone like me, it made it a lot more comfortable. You know, to like realize, oh, okay, yeah,
Cool.
he's a normal fucking guy who's like willing to talk. Awesome.
Yeah, I think I mean, it's partly my goal, in that it's that awkward conundrum, or what's the word I'm looking for? It's this constant battle between the people that want attention are the ones that we probably don't need to be giving attention to. Like the people that want power are not usually the ones that should have it.
Right.
And the people that don't want power or attention don't want it. And so there's this ironic problem where like we wind up with a media space that's full of fucking egotistical assholes. And the more you push yourself into that media space, the more inherently egotistical you are. But like, we need people that aren't so bound up in themselves in that space to help model to young people to just chill the fuck out. And so from the start, I've been trying to be really intentional about pushing myself out there and being more of a voice, but intentionally doing so in a way that can help hopefully model a little more humility and humanity. Because we are all leading by example here on the internet, regardless of the size of your platform. And everyone that sees you is judging you and judging their own lives against you. And someone in my position with a big platform now, it's like I have a lot of power to affect people's, especially younger people's, like ideas of what is cool and what's right to be that. And so I mean, I am naturally this person. Like I'm naturally like, my flaw is that I'm too chill, and that I'm not like my flaw is that I'm letting important messages slip through the cracks, because I would rather like do less of all the professional part of this job and more of the just like what actually speaks to my heart and actually like what I care about and what keeps it really entertaining and fun for me, at the expense of like I could have made more money on sponsorships or, you know, nailed some big interviews, something, I don't know, but like I would rather keep it more human. And the way that you approach me for this interview is a great example of it. It's like, you're great, and you're always in the comments, you're a homie. And so I'm like, yeah, dude, I'll do it. Like, yeah, I got a fucking setup. I can do an interview anytime, bro. We can talk. And the way that you're so chill about it made it easy for how chill I am to be just like, sick, I'll set that up. It's a lot harder for me to schedule with people that have like schedules and like real lives and stuff. I'm just a chill dude.
Right on. Yeah, that's cool, man, and I appreciate that compliment. You know, I do. So, speaking of your inbox, by the way, right? Like, because, okay, let me backtrack. So the other night, by the way, you did a fucking epic stream, right? 4 hours, right? At least. And I fell asleep right at the end. So I didn't even hang till the full end. I have to admit it, dude. But you,
yeah,
did you
it was long.
80,000 on the live stream?
It was 92,000 live by the end. It was wild. It was, at start, it was like 30,000 or so. And by the end, it grew and grew and grew. And I think by the end of like my actual information, like by the end of my notes, we were at like 80,000. And I kind of like a big looking for something else to watch, because it jumped bigly at the end, and tempted to want to try to wait around for 100K. Just like, what? Oh, it's all good. Can you get?
Yeah, you're back. Yeah, it's probably my AT&T because
yeah, that was a really
good,
really
right?
fun stream.
Yeah, dude, it was awesome. And the other thing is, on that stream, you showed kind of your notes. It looked a lot like mind maps, but your notes are, there's so many, dude, but they're organized so well. So it's clear that you spend a lot of time on that. So I would imagine, like, what's your inbox look like compared to that? Because how do you regulate that time, right? You can't just say hello to everybody and be able to fucking do all that, or can you? Can you hear me, or did I talk to myself?
Wanted to be really nice to everyone, and I can hear, but like, yeah, when I first started, I was interacting with up in my like making friends and making connections because I only had one platform. I had basically I was gaining 300,000 followers a month at first on TikTok. It was crazy.
I don't know if you can hear me, but you're freezing up on my side. I can tell you're talking, but no audio.
Been trying. A little bit.
What's that? I heard you. Peekaboo.
I have started to prioritize my work, my inboxes, and over because for a while I was early tied to my in like stuff. I tried to only do deals with people who I truly believe in and only work with companies that I would actually care to promote. And so I had to do a lot of sorting and like it was very I really had to be in
The stream is dying, I think. I don't know.
To make sure I made that money.
Yeah, the last couple minutes has been in and out. I think the stream's dying on us. I think Google's trying to tell me to shut the fuck up or something. I think I lost you, buddy. Yep, pretty sure I lost him. I think it's me.
Let me give one more short answer to your question and see if it can pick.
Hold on. I
Because your question about how do I.
Yeah, give me a second. The stream it looks like it's kind of coming in because I can start hearing you, but yeah, it looks like something. Can you even hear me?
I'm not super stressed.
Hold on 1 second. Stay in here. Let me try something. 1 second.
Yeah, no.
There. Let's see if that works. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay. See if that works.
You're a lot clearer all of a sudden.
Oh, thanks, buddy.
It looks like it helped. Yeah.
You're a little scrambled visually, but it doesn't matter. As long as the audio's there, you know, that's the main thing. It's the substance of the conversation that matters to me.
So I'll see if Google can let us get a short in here then.
Google, thank you. Why, oh, why didn't I pick Zoom?
Oh, it's
Yeah. Every now and again you break through, but it could be my my AT&T. I downgraded.
could be raging outside where you are that's just so raging and real.
I can see you moving.
Cool. I mean, I'm can use with this if you want.
What's that?
That I've got to start cooking for in about 20.
Yeah. I can't hear you too much. But can you hear me?
Frustrating.
Well, maybe that's...
Do you want to see? Do you want to put together some outro shot, like some like closing questions or clips, well in between our, so that you have something to end it all on, because it might take us a few internet to make it happen.
Right. Yeah, let's so small groups, right?
If the internet totally fucks everything up.
Yeah. How about let's how about some call outs, like people on whether it's X, TikTok, Facebook, whatever, that you enjoy, that you feel like, they have good content, or that you would recommend. You want to just give a shout out to those people, or just kind of lay some of that out?
In my understanding, and I've been so fortunate to have them on board, to have them making content, to have them educating me. And I mean, the first guy, this dude named James Lee, who's a contributor to Breaking Points, and he's primarily active on TikTok and YouTube.
Hold on. Hey, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right. Do you mind, can we kill this call real quick, start a real call, and just to kind of do a quick exit, kind of lay the call out, because whatever's going on, I get you
And
for like a split
send me
second.
a new link.
All right. I appreciate you, brother. It'll be right here in a minute. Yeah, that's how we're gonna end it. Hey, there you are,
Google's
buddy.
being slow, but it's letting me back.
I can see you. And you're frozen. Oh well. I broke Ian. Oh. You know what? It don't even matter, buddy. This has went on for a while. I appreciate you so much for your time and for engaging. Thank you very much. You made this interview extremely easy, and the fact that I enjoy you so much, like, I was a little bit nervous, but you've been nothing but a gentleman the whole way through, which I've appreciated.
Man, it was a really enjoyable conversation.
Thank you, buddy. And I can hear you now, so that's awesome. I want to give out a shout out to all the people that I love, like Ian and United Spot and Pirate Radio and Miss Doubtpfizer and, you know, all those kinds of great people. I wish I could hear more of the people that Ian was saying, because, like, the James Lee you said, by the way, I followed him. He's like very similar to you, like the way you guys lay out your content.
Yeah, and he's super balanced. Yeah.
Yeah, guy's awesome.
Yeah, he's super intelligent.
Well, thank you anyways for your time, and I'll see you out in the battlefield. Hopefully one of these days we'll do something together. I sincerely appreciate you, dude. Thank you so much. You're slaying
100%. 100%. I'm glad you're on the team.
Oh, thank you, buddy. All right, and for anyone who's still watching, I appreciate it. And by the way, dude, just so you know, I appreciate the fact that, like, going into this, like, you know, like, only a handful of people probably actually, like, see this thing, but the fact that you were still down for doing it just speaks volumes about your character, dude, and I fucking love that.
Yeah, man.
So, that's it, man. Go enjoy your life. You got another big stream coming on Friday or what?
I do. I'm not sure if it'll be. I'm digging into the Finder's Cult documents, and I'm not sure if I'll have those documents ready in time for Friday. But I am intending to make the Free Speech Fridays a regular occurrence.
Okay. Do you know who the Phone Booth podcast is? Like Bill and Ted and all those guys?
No, but I'll look it up right now.
All right. So on X, there's like Bill and Ted and Rufus and Death. You know, they're actually the second interview that I'll be doing. I got one with them on 4/19. So I just want to give them a little shout out and love, because there were two people that I approached right away. There was you and there was them, and everybody was so warm in their receptions. They're like, hell yeah. So I'm trying to get Jacob, what is it, Angsley? I'm trying to get an interview with him. We'll see if that works out. Maybe he'll watch this and be like, yeah, he's worth it. So we'll see. Because that dude, I had no idea he was as wise as he was, you know? Like, I bought into the QAnon shaman shit, you know, and I thought he was some crazy lefty. But then you, like, hear that guy fucking talk, and it's like, all right, dude, yeah, I want to pick this guy's brain. So.
Yeah. I think I just jumped into one of his Twitter spaces by chance and started talking to him. It's like, whoa, hold up, dude. You're supposed to be an idiot. Why are you saying such smart things? And now he and I are homies. He's super cool.
That's what's up. All right. Well, go enjoy your evening, Ian. I really appreciate you, brother. And that's
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Later.
And we'll do this again in a couple months, man.
Yeah. Sounds good, man. Thank you very much. Peace.
Any electric cat will, use those